Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. And we continue on in Module 7, looking at the topic of operations, production of goods and services. And so in this particular video, we are looking at the topic of business strategy determining your operations. Now, that may seem like a bit of a mouthful. We'll try to parse this up in a way that makes sense to you, but I also want to let you know there is a supplemental video from the textbook publisher, which I've also included on Canvas. And so you should take a look at that as well. It underscores a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this video, and so it may help you to better understand the concepts we're talking about here in this particular video. Think of it as a companion to this particular lecture. All right, so what do we mean that business strategy determines operations? Well, we have to define some terms here. You can see here that when we're talking about the topic of operations capability or production capability, let's first talk about what strategy is. This is sort of an introduction to the topic. We will talk about this in more detail, the topic of strategy, when we hit one of the later modules on leadership and planning. But for now, think of strategy this way. You can see my first bullet point. Strategy is your overall plan for how you will be successful with your products in the marketplace. That's certainly one way to look at and describe strategy. Strategy is a term that comes to us in business that we sort of borrowed from military vocabulary, and business is not a war. Business doesn't necessarily need to even be seen as a competition per se, right? Really what you're trying to do as an organization is be successful in the marketplace. In some ways you may think you need to be more successful than some of your other competitors, but really that's not what defines you, right? What defines you is how successful you are on your own terms. And so as we return to the slide, strategy can be thought of as simply how you plan to be successful with your products or services in the marketplace. And therefore, strategy will primarily be driven by who you are, and specifically who you are in your own special ability that helps you outperform your competition. In other words, what is it that compared to other options in the marketplace, what makes you different and makes you better? Now you realize just because you're different doesn't necessarily mean you're better, but is there something you bring to the marketplace that makes you unique and better than the other options out there? What makes you special? What makes you unique and therefore catches the attention of the consumer? What differentiates you from any other option out there? That's probably what will be a big part of driving your strategy. Now you can see on the slide, after you develop your strategy, your overall plan for how your differences and what makes you different and better is going to drive how you will be successful in the marketplace, then you align operations, your production plans, to execute your strategy. Now, it does need to be said when we're talking about strategy that over time, excellent firms learn how to achieve more than just one distinctive competence, more than just one competitive advantage. But that is certainly a discussion for another module when we speak at greater length about the topic of strategy. Suffice for now to say, well, depending on how you're going to compete in the marketplace, your overall strategy is going to determine some of the key decisions you make about production. So let's see if we can give you some examples of these. And there will be these examples repeated in the supplemental video from the textbook publisher, but we should mention them here as well. Let's consider 4 different firms. And these firms, you may be familiar with all of them, or perhaps only 3 of them. So first of all is the Toyota Motor Company that brings, of course, to market Toyota and Lexus automobiles. Their strategy for attracting customers is to be renowned for quality, for overall quality. Cars that perform reliably, have an appealing fit and finish, and consistently meet or exceed customer expectations at a competitive price. Now, the second company we'll discuss is a grocery company known as Save-A-Lot. Save-A-Lot primarily has stores in Colorado and other parts of the Midwest. They are a low-cost supermarket. And they, as you can see there in the last column, they bring foods and everyday items offered at savings up to 40% less than conventional food chains. All right. The third company is 3M. And their strategy for attracting customers to their products is flexibility. You can see there that their hallmark is innovation, with more than 55,000 different products in a constantly changing line of convenience items for home and office. Then the fourth company is Federal Express, or FedEx. Their strategy for attracting customers is dependability. And so you see what they try to do. Every delivery is fast and on time, exactly as promised. Now that's the strategy that they have decided on. These four companies have respectively chosen for how they're going to attract customers and be successful in the marketplace. Quality, low cost, flexibility, and dependability. And so the point of this video lecture is that choice, once that company has chosen their strategy for attracting customers, that choice will then drive how they design, plan, and execute operations. So let's see if we can take a little bit of a look at each of those. So for instance, here in this slide, you see that with Toyota, because they have chosen a strategy of quality in the marketplace, you can see their key operations choices and characteristics. They want to use nothing but high quality standards for the materials, the raw materials that come in to the assembly line to make their materials. They also use a just-in-time materials flow, an inventory system that has a just-in-time principle, which you will learn later means essentially that they are stocking just the sufficient materials for immediate production, rather than keeping warehouses full of inventory collecting dust. Another way that they choose to run operations to support their quality strategy, you see their specialized automated equipment for consistent product buildup. In other words, they use robots to make sure they can deliver consistent high quality every automobile. And then finally, the point they leave here, the last point for quality, operations personnel are experts on continuous improvement of product, work methods, and materials. In other words, their operations personnel are trained in how to continually seek improvement of quality. And that's at least four of the ways that, because they have chosen the quality strategy, that drives operations decisions. Now, contrast that with Save-A-Lot. You see there in the second part of this table, right? Because they have chosen low cost as the strategy they're bringing to the marketplace, you see some of the operations decisions they've made. They don't have a lot of small little departments like floral departments, sushi bars, or an in-house bank. They don't have excessive overhead. They avoid costly inventory. Second bullet point, they have a limited assortment of products, mainly just staples that people buy all the time in one size only for low cost restocking, lower inventories, less paperwork, right? So you can't get everything at a Save-A-Lot, but the stuff you can get, you get at a huge discount. Now, what's number three? Many locations, small stores, less than half the size of a normal grocery store, right? So they have many locations, but smaller ones, so that they keep construction and maintenance costs low. And finally, they reduce labor and shelving costs by receiving and selling merchandise out of all identical size, custom-sized shipping cartons. So they've even gone to the point of redesigning and customizing shipping cartons in an effort to drive cost down at every possible opportunity. And in this slide, the last two companies, you can see there, we won't go through every bullet point here, but you can see with the 3M company, whose strategy is flexibility, right, that they always maintain excess production capacity so that when a new idea comes up, they can get it to market quickly, right? Or look at the third bullet point. They hire operations personnel who thrive on change, and so they make sure they're looking for employees to hire personnel in production who really like the idea of not doing the same thing, mass quantities, but doing different stuff in the production cycle. So even from looking at the personality and the preferences of staff, that helps to drive their strategy. And then with FedEx, right? Dependability, right? And so therefore, let's pick a couple of these key operations characteristics, right? Maybe number 2, wireless information system for package scanning by courier, updating of package movement, and package tracking by the customer. They were one of the first to have detailed tracking because of their IT system. Now, many delivery services have caught up to that, but they were one of the first. If they were going to be dependable, they were going to make sure that even the customer could track the package at every step of the way. And in order to be dependable, let's take the last bullet point there, right? That they have 25 automated regional distribution hubs that process 3.5 million packages per day for next day deliveries. They were one of the first worldwide next day delivery companies. In order to do that, they redesigned their distribution flow. In other words, they designed their operations and production, service production, in order to support the premise that their next day deliveries would be absolutely positively there overnight without error or fail. Now, what do we take away from these slides? We take away that there are prior decisions that are made, crucial, important decisions that are made about the organization, namely, what is your overall strategy that will distinguish you from your competition, that will make you different and better than your other competitors, right? And that first set of decisions then will drive how you design, how you maintain, how you improve, and how you run production and operations. You have to have the first in order to drive the second, and that way, if you do it in that order, your operations capability will continue to support your strategic initiative in the marketplace, and it will work in such a way that you can improve and grow and continue to deliver high performance in your strategy to the marketplace. Operations and strategy working together, complementing one another. Strategy drives operations, and together they bring excellence to the marketplace, no matter which strategy that you select and develop to bring to consumers. Hope that helps. We'll see you in the next lecture.